Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Nancy Solari, and this is the Living Full Out Show. And today we're talking about continuing to rise. That means that you're always looking to stretch and grow and find ways to evolve. And our inspirational guest today, Chelsey Pete, has done just a beautiful example of that through her life. And I don't want to give her whole story away, so welcome, Chelsey, to the show.
Hi, Nancy. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad. And the interesting thing is, not for every guest, but for you, your story really starts at birth. And can you share with us, and remember that we are radio here, so, visually, if you could even share with us, can you share with us, what is unique and special about you, your birthmark, and how that came to be?
For sure. I was born with a rare condition called Sturge-Weber syndrome. It's a rare neurological condition where an individual is born with a large birthmark. Mine, for example, runs about halfway down my face, all on the left side, from top of my head all the way down to my chin. Nice dark purple birthmark, but it's not a regular birthmark. It actually goes far beneath the skin and affects all the tissues and organs beneath. So for myself, for example, there was some brain involvement, eye involvement, sinuses, basically everywhere that my birthmark lays. And with that came a lot of challenges and barriers and various complications and health things and stuff that made life for me a little bit different than it would for other people.
Well, I know, thank you for sharing that, because you are very unique, and I appreciate that. You're a great example of what it means to live full out, but I say that because as a little girl, you were the oldest of all the kiddos, and your parents, were there for you as much as they could be. Your dad, obviously traveled quite a bit for work, and but you had so many medical appointments, and sometimes your siblings were out doing things that you wished you could do, soccer and sleepovers. But why was it that as a little girl, you couldn't go to sleepovers? Why was it that your peers didn't treat you the same?
Well, because I looked different. I noticed from a very young age that I wasn't like my peers, and they made it very apparent very quickly as well. Between the bullies and the awkward conversations, or the parents that were scared of this child who had, different things about her, I suddenly found a world that wasn't as kind and wasn't as caring as it was to my siblings. And there was times that frustrated me. But it was heartbreaking because, you didn't have the same aspects of friendship or schoolmates or the peer support that you definitely needed growing up as a kid.
It is kind of interesting, though, because you are an old soul. Here, all these other kiddos were talking about dances, and you're talking about the philosophy of life. I mean, you had many, many chapters of life, way more than they did at your young age. And that depth, that soulfulness side of you, when you were growing up and you started to notice that your parents weren't getting along as much, even your mom confided in you as, her friend, her counselor. But ultimately, your parents separated when you were 18. And that was supposed to be when you were going to go to college, new chapter, another chapter. But because of all the family dynamics and the need to take care of your younger siblings, you ended up having to not go to school and do so many different things. But around that time, you also met Matt, your husband of today. But I know that even with you and Matt, the youngness of dating, right? You were together, then you might have broke up. But something happened early on, a bit of a surprise. What happened there?
Yes, definitely a surprise. Not in my cards, at least not planned for sure. But Matthew and I were dating a little bit off and on, and we had just come back from a bit of a breakup. We'd had some struggles, and went to the doctor because I wasn't feeling well. And of course, like lots of teens, that's where you get the unfortunate surprise of, yeah, you don't have a kidney infection, or, oh, you don't have something wrong with your back. No, in fact, the back pain is, in fact, you're pregnant. And for myself, that was another layer of chaos because with my rare condition, I didn't even know if I could be pregnant.
That is scary because when
Hmm.
you're kind of the first and you don't have
Hmm.
data, Dr. Google isn't exactly telling you, what's going to happen. That's frightening. But the good news is you did have your baby healthy, perfect, beautiful. But interestingly enough, I personally believe, Chelsey, that we should only get one card in life, right? You had yours,
Hmm.
right? Growing up, all that
Hmm.
medical. I had mine, blindness, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you actually you fainted. You collapsed one day at the store with your mom. What happened there?
Oh, that was a scary day. It was probably about 2 years after I'd had my baby. And yeah, I was out shopping with my mom, and I don't remember much about that day, other than I can remember at one point being in an ambulance and thinking, oh my goodness, what's happening? It turned out that I had actually gone undiagnosed with gestational diabetes. And in the couple years after having her, not eating the greatest with the postpartum and not taking care of myself, taking care of the baby, and I ended up being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And it was because my blood sugars were so high that day. They said I actually should have had a stroke and died. It was um, a very scary couple of weeks for me. I had to learn very quickly a whole new set of daily tasks and taking care of myself and, wanting to be there for my daughter. It was definitely scary.
I'm not sure what's harder, growing up as you did as a kiddo, feeling not like you fit in, or, having, type 2 diabetes, being told
Hmm.
that you almost died. I mean,
Hmm.
which one was harder?
Each had their own perils. If anything, being the resilient person that I am, growing up that way, it was just something else to tack on to my list of accomplishments. It was something that, yeah, it was going to be hard. I, for one, was not enjoying the fact I had to give myself my own needles every day and test my blood sugars and change my whole thought process on food. It was, worrying about what kind of complications I could have down the road if I didn't take care of myself, or wanting to be that example for my daughter. So it was just something else to add to my belt of utility resilience.
What I love about you, Chelsey, is you're like, yeah, it's a good thing. It's a resilient thing. It's kind of how you look at it, right? And I feel that
Mm-hmm.
same way about blindness. You got to take the card you're given in life, and you got to learn from it. You got to look for that silver lining in
Mm-hmm.
it. And as
Mm-hmm.
the audience stays with us, believe it or not, there's silver linings to both of what she went through. And so stay with us. Today we are talking about continuing to rise as you live full out. We'll be back. Welcome back. I'm Nancy Solari, and this is the Living Full Out Show. And today we're with Chelsey P. We're talking today about continuing to rise, and we're going to jump back into her inspirational story. Welcome back, Chelsey.
Thank you so much.
Well, we talked about, growing up the way you did, your birthmark, how it, was fearful to the kids. But, ironically, the parents were the ones that had the bigger issue with it. And, it's funny how growing up that way, though, becoming a mom yourself, being a good example for your own kiddos, you wanted to find a way to provide, to be that example. You tried to get different jobs, though, when you
Mm-hmm.
after your first child was born. But how difficult was that to find a job that, again, didn't scare people off, and you, because you are so smart and so loving? What did you end up doing?
Well, finding a job for me has always been difficult just because, the usual parameters are there, obviously. But when you walk into a job interview, you can suddenly just know you're not going to get the job. And it's happened with me with just having those individuals in HR or management take a look at me and note that I wasn't the face for their company. Excuse the pun, but it's true. Just, the fact that I look so visibly different, a lot of people are uncomfortable with it. It's just something new, strange, unique.
Hmm.
But for me, the challenge was even worse when I suddenly found myself having to find work to help support my family and income, but also being, maybe I had a job, but dealing also with workplace bullying or discrimination or, aspects of my job, people not seeing me as a peer because to me, I was just the weird person with the thing on her face. It was daunting, to say the least.
Well, and you did eventually go on and have little girl number two. But interestingly enough, you kind of say she's a little bit like Chelsey if you hadn't had the birthmark. In what way?
Oh, definitely so. My youngest is a rebel when she needs to be, but she's also the kindest person you'll ever meet. She is happy to stop in the middle of any store and educate someone if they take too long looking at mom and her birthmark. And she's adventurous, almost sometimes to her own peril, but she's a little version of me. She's so kind and empowering, and I'm proud of the girl that I'm seeing right now growing up, for sure.
See, you get to do this life twice, Chelsey. once your own way and once her way. It's good. Now, you never gave up on wanting to, thrive in your own career, but also getting educated. Now, I know early on, you had to step away from college due to, the parents separating and taking care of your siblings, but you never lost sight of wanting to get that degree. And in fact, you most recently have completed it. What finally got you to take that action? And did you have to go to a physical school where you knew you were going to be stared at?
I decided to go back to school because I knew my current work options were not anything that I could see myself doing for a long time. And witnessing the world around me and seeing the further discrimination and social injustices and struggles, I went, I can't just sit here. I've got to do something. I've always been that person with advocacy and action and the good for all. And recently I decided to go back to school, and while working full time and being a mother, it was just not possible. So I ended up starting a degree and did it on the spare time, evenings, weekends, whenever I could breathe. There were times I didn't sleep, just trying to get it done. But I'm going to convocation here next weekend. Actually, I will be convocating with my degree in sociology with a minor in women and gender studies. So I'm definitely proud of that.
Well, this is such an interesting time for you because you're finally conquering getting that 4-year degree, and you and Matt are celebrating your 18th wedding anniversary, which must be surreal because that's when your parents kind of split, when they hit the 18 mark, and now you're at that mark. Does that feel odd?
It does. And I've actually kind of noted that myself recently with all of this. And I go, I can't see myself leaving my husband. We are happily married. We've accomplished things we didn't think we would, both in our personal lives, but also even as a family. And if anything, it's just, we've grown stronger over the years. So, yeah.
One of the things that's interesting too is after all of the medical, after all the medical that, dealing with, the birthmark and all that, then dealing with the type 2 diabetes, I don't know how you fell into the hobby of wanting tattoos on your body, but in the spirit of today being, continuing to rise, which is what we champion for people to do in their life, to get off that couch and take action. But you have actually a similar theme, tattoo on your body. What does that say, and why did you get that?
I have a fallen angel on my forearm, and just below her, it says, "Still I rise." And it's for all those times where, I felt like I had to hide under makeup, or I had to avoid a social situation, or deal with those moments of staring or judgment or biased inclusion. But still I rose. I was able to get through it. I took off my mask. In fact, I don't wear makeup out. I embrace my birthmark. I stop, I educate, I advocate. And that's a big part now, even in my career with working with individuals with disabilities. It's showing them how to be a self-advocate. If I can go outside and not let it hinder me, you can too.
Well, and I like how you actually have that silver lining, like your birthmark was your first tattoo? And
Oh,
how,
yeah.
how did you come up with that? I think that's very clever.
Well, after, of course, once everyone says, once you get your first tattoo, you're addicted. And for me, unfortunately, that was the case. But it was also the fact that, I sat there and I thought about it and I went, I can't get rid of this birthmark. It's permanent. My understanding on the aspect of permanence is different than anyone else's because I was born different. And I kind of took that as, okay, well, my birthmark just happened to be placed by fate. And it's the first one that I got. And it makes me uniquely me. There's no one else on this planet. People may have similar facial birthmarks, but no one on this planet. It's its own fingerprint of fate. And I've always taken that with me now as, same with my tattoos. They're pieces of me, chapters of my life, battles, um, mottos, things to aspire or things to remember. And yeah.
Well, and let's talk about chapters here. So, one of your most proudest moments was recently publishing your memoir, your story. But what's interestingly about that is this was a story that you had been writing since you were young. In what way?
Mm. Journaling was always a piece of, if I wasn't listening to music for therapy, I was journaling. I was writing things down. I was going through an experience and evaluating it. I was looking at the world like I always did from my set view. And writing just brought me peace of mind. I could get out my frustrations. I could look at the world. And so this book came a part of me and it kind of just traveled with me. And I went through different chapters, different times in my life, scary moments, stressful moments, beautiful moments. And it was finally time to get it out there into the world and be a really critical resource for families or individuals with loved ones with visible differences or Sturge-Weber syndrome or birthmarks or disabilities or, a whole chasm of community.
Well, I know your parents, they stood up for you as good parents do. And I bet your kiddos have stood up for you, protecting their mom. That must be kind of heartwarming, though, because it gives them an opportunity to do that. If you didn't have the birthmark, you didn't have type 2 diabetes, there wouldn't be that opportunity for them to be so loving.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I'm so thankful for both of my girls. They are true advocates. They've learned from mom. They've watched me, educate and advocate people. But yeah, like I mentioned, my youngest, she will walk right up to a complete stranger and start talking to them about mom's birthmark. Or she'll, if one of her friends asks when I'm at school, then she's standing right there telling them about it and giving them facts. Or we're wearing our birthmark advocacy shirts on our special days. Or yeah, they are my definitely little advocates.
We get people that write us all the time that have different conditions. Might be, multiple sclerosis or, maybe they're blind, even like me. And some of these parents, they actually feel bad. Like, oh, my children shouldn't have to deal with this. Like, it was one thing for me to deal with it as a child or for me to deal with it, through the generations of my years. But do you sometimes, wish that you didn't have the birthmark, that you didn't have people saying or staring or, so that your kids didn't have to deal with that? Or how have you come to kind of full circle on that? Because a lot of parents feel bad.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and it's its own form of grief. It's, an expectation that doesn't quite happen the way you want it to. For me, I can certainly say that, yeah, my teen years and my young adult, that whole sense of growing into yourself, it took me time. And there was plenty of it that I wished I didn't have to go through painful procedures or deal with the staring or have the struggles with connecting with people or, all the awkward bits of it. But in a sense, I've also kind of just matured into that aspect of I'm uniquely me. I just happen to have purple skin. People can stare. Fine. I'm happy to start a conversation with you, though, and help you learn that my condition is not contagious or scary. I'm not a bad guy. The media might portray me as one, but instead I would much rather we become friends or be a member of your community and help support you through, your struggles. And if anything, that's what kind of pushes me every day for all of my advocacy work that I do.
Well, I think that's important, and I think you've made the best of the situation. But when I say situation, everybody want you to know, don't cry for Chelsey. Look at her, mom, wife, wrote a book. She's graduating, successful marriage. So Chelsey, I just don't think you could do it better. So great job on just being a really stellar example of living full out. We wish you all the best with all these new chapters that you're starting. And for everybody else listening today, it's really about living full out. It's about growing together. So if you've got a story to tell, you've been through something challenging in your life, a heartbreak, a disability, whatever that is, let us know. Share with us what you've learned. Give us your contact info. We'd love to have you on as an inspirational guest, because when we continue to rise together, then no one's left behind. We're all living full out.